Hi, everybody. You're tuned into the Music Industry 360 podcast, your all access pass to all things music business. From insider secrets to essential resources, we've got you covered. And I am your host, Randall Foster, Chief Creative Officer at Symphonic. That's a mouthful. That's a heck of an intro, isn't it, Jocelynn? With us today is one of my favorite people and somebody that I have so much history with and probably has so much dirt on me that it would keep me out of politics. Joining us today is Jocelynn Pryor from Amped Distribution. Jocelynn is Vice President of Marketing at Amped. Amped, of course, is the independent distribution arm of distribution powerhouse Alliance Entertainment. Jocelynn, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. This is so exciting. I love this kind of stuff.
Too fun. Let me give everybody a little bit of a taste of kind of your bio and who you are and where you're coming from, so we can really get into this, because I think that the subject matter today, being that we're normally just talking digital strategy, things like that, but we're looking at, this is the Music Industry 360 after all, and in a 360 degree view of an artist's career, one would be remiss to not think or talk about physical distribution, physical product, and all of that. But before we get into that, just a little about Jocelynn. She's worked with thousands of labels and artists throughout the years, coached, consulted, mentored, and served as a guide in strategy and monetization of physical music. Amongst others, just a few names, no big deal. Some folks she's worked with and helped succeed: Arlo Parks, Five Finger Death Punch, Hardy, the great Herb Alpert, Larry June, Anderson .Paak, Shabuzi, who is obviously at the top of the game right now, and so many more. The neatest thing about Jocelynn, and she and I were just talking about this before we hit record, is the fact that, like so many awesome industry heavyweights that I know today, she started in retail. She started at a Sam Goody store in Downey, California in a year, long time ago. I'm not going to say the year because she looks too young to have started working at that age. But Jocelynn, like, talk to us about the physical landscape, because you've really seen it through every ideation possible over the last 30 years or so. Which is nuts, because we've went from, in that time period, a time when physical was literally it. It was everything. New music. There wasn't New Music Fridays, folks. It was New Music Tuesdays. New Music Tuesdays was a huge deal. I remember hanging out at the record store at midnight Monday night to pick up the thing I was most excited about. But you've really weathered the industry and seen the industry go through an entire evolution, haven't you?
I really have. When I first came on the scene, it was, the world of cassettes. And so I've lived through a number of configuration iteration changes throughout the industry or throughout the timeline in the industry, I guess I should say. So when I came on the scene, I was a cassette single specialist. And, for those of you that remember, people would hear songs on the radio and they'd come in and they'd hum the tune, and you'd have to try to name that tune and figure out what it was they heard, and then match it up with the cassette single, and then try to sell them two more so they could get three for, $7.49 or whatever it was at the time. So, but you really, in that position, I really learned about the hits and radio and what the connection looks like, when a new tune drops, and how it can move through the ecosystem all the way into retail. And then, I remember very distinctly when, the long box CDs came into play, and we were putting CDs in the stores. And then when they were moved to short box, we had to open all those long boxes and make them short boxes. I mean, oh my gosh. So, and then of course, the advent of digital and streaming, and then more recently, how, vinyl made such a huge comeback and is still making a comeback. And oddly enough, cassettes are sort of, have made a comeback in the last couple of years as well, in a small way. So, I've definitely seen it and lived through some of that.
Cassettes are kitschy, aren't they? I have seen them here and there. I've actually seen, like, there's someone is marketing a new Walkman, which is like if you're not familiar, is a portable cassette player that most of us dinosaurs used to listen to music on back in the day.
Yeah. In fact, if you go to any secondhand store in America and try to find a Sony Walkman or one of those cassette Walkmans, best of luck to you. You will not find one. Those things are worth gold. Remember the black and yellow one from Sony? Everybody had that. Oh, it was so cool. I wish I still had mine. Yeah, that thing's worth a fortune.
It's crazy to me. And the statistic that always just absolutely rocks me every time I see it, and I see it pretty regularly, is that statistic of vinyl purchaser to turntable owner, which is crazy. And you probably have more updated statistics, but last time I saw, I think it was 50% of vinyl customers don't have a way to play the vinyl they purchased.
Yeah, I think that number has definitely changed now, because if you look at the last handful of years, like Amazon and in the consumer electronics industry, one of the number one configurations of sales has been on vinyl players. And so there's a lot of people now. A lot of them are entry-level players. So in terms of sound and quality and things of that nature, it's still sort of elementary, but absolutely. You've also seen high-end audio take off. You get people like Billie Eilish out there talking about how she recorded for the high-end audio file. Like, some people are going to jump to it. It's just, that stuff is so expensive. Not everybody can afford that. But yeah, there's a lot more people that play that than don't. And what's interesting about that is when you are playing a piece of vinyl, I'm a marketer, so you think about it from a marketer's standpoint, the type of fan engagement that you get from somebody actually playing a piece of vinyl versus even, let's say, streaming. There's some passivity around streaming, but if you've got a piece of vinyl, you've got somebody who literally opened up a physical piece, took the thing out, walked over, put it on a player, turned the player on, at some point in the middle of listening, has to go back and re-engage with that thing again, flip it over, put the next, put it down. I mean, there's no better fan engagement than on the physical piece of product, because you really actually have to touch it and hold it. And you're using more of your senses when you're doing it. So there's some real science behind that in terms of the engagement there.
Well, and the tactile piece, and most people I know that listen to vinyl are holding the liner notes and they're reading the booklet and what was inside the package, and at a time in the industry when album credits are so important, when people, especially songwriters, producers, mix engineers are so concerned to make sure that the crediting is done appropriately. And in digital, it's been especially a challenge. And of course, the DSPs are now kind of rising to meet the challenge. But for so long, that metadata was just missing. You don't have to worry about metadata when it's part of a liner note. And
right.
That translates, right?
Yeah. Unless if you've got somebody making your liner notes that forgets about these very important things.
Very true. Very true.
Very important.
Let's dive into your role at Amped a little bit. You're vice president of marketing. That's an all-encompassing title. In marketing is a lot of things to a lot of people. What's your day-to-day look like? What does your role encompass, and like what kind of marks a great day for Jocelynn?
Oh, a great day for Jocelynn.
Other than being Saturday, on the Music Industry 360. Getting the podcast interview with Randall, top of the marks. Beyond that, though, your normal other days.
Yeah. I still get super excited when I sit down with a label and I hear about their new forthcoming projects. Every single time I crack open a file or I get an email that says, there's a new fill in the blank, I just get so excited about it. And I love still hearing the new music. I like to just submerge myself. Now I really like to watch the videos. But that always starts the creative ball rolling for me, is to hear the music and let that inform before I even hear sometimes the narrative from the label that, they're rolling out to us here in distribution. I like to hear the music and let that inform some of my creativity, and just decide, like, how are we going to roll this out to market? because as you know, in distribution, we're the point in between, the label's working with the artists and getting this product ready to go and creating the narrative and, starting to work on direct to consumer campaigns and things of that nature. And then I'm really the middleman that's going and taking this to retail. So anyone from, Grimey's in Nashville or Vinyl Tap or Amoeba or Amazon or Target, Best Buy, Walmart, all of those folks and everything in between, the Talk Shop Lives and all of those different types of retailers that are out there. We're taking it to them. And so we have to create a story and we have to be able to bring them the message. And so I'm looking for the best possible way to do that, as well as how can we make sure that once a consumer walks into a store at a said retailer, that they see it. It's on an end cap. It's in a listening station. They get something at the cash wrap. So all of those things are things that I'm thinking about. And all of that starts from the minute I see that there is a title that's going to be coming from someone, from one of my labels.
Awesome.
And I get so excited about it.
It's such a symbiotic relationship, isn't it? I mean, they have to bring you, and this is there's a lot of confusion in digital in that there's a lot expected upon distributors. I think in physical, the expectations are a little more, I would hope, are a little more levied and traditional in the fact that they bring you the marketing, the story, the narrative. And then at that point, you throw fuel on the fire to make it a bigger whatever it is. That actually leads into kind of my next question as you started speaking about marketing opportunities. I mean, when we first met, end caps, price and positioning, the Barnes and Noble end cap was the coveted space to be in, especially in the genre I was dealing with at the time. I'm actually, I am a client of Jocelyn's. And so I can speak very, very firsthand about the good things that she does in that level and in that space. But what are some other marketing opportunities? I mean, it certainly, it feels like it's not quite as much pay to play as it used to be because retail has shrank so much. Have you seen some changes in that?
So while there has been shrinkage in chain retail for sure, the indies are on fire. I just actually got back from Indie Summer Camp in New Orleans, and I can't tell you the amount of stores that were new there that are humming along, and they've got, beer and wine in their stores, or they've got venues in their stores, and there's just so many new retailers out there in the indie space. So it's super exciting because they've got tons of opportunity, from in stores to listening parties to, they put up Duratrans and window clings and all that kind of stuff. They do giveaways and so there's so much opportunity in marketing in those spaces now. I feel like the indies are like the new, bus benches, if you will. Like you can really use them, work with them to put posters up all over. And I mean, that's like the most captive audience there. That is your target audience. So it's such a great opportunity to be able to get the word out there. And forgive me, what was the second part of your question?
Just curious about the other marketing opportunities that are there. And the second part was it felt like before, back when I was at Naxos, it felt like it was just the almighty dollar, and it had a lot less to do with the product or the quality of the product, like from an editorial standpoint per store, and it was a lot more. They paid us the most, so we're going to give them this opportunity.
Yeah. There is definitely still some of that in the retail space, but at the end of the day, there is far less than there ever used to be. And there's a lot of free marketing opportunities out there as well. When you put your artists, put URLs, like you put Record Store Day in your link fire, and then you tweet that out and from the artist page, and then Record Store Day will re-share that. That's free. That's just something that they'll do. So there's a lot of free marketing that's out there. I know here at AMPed, we do social media asset delivery. And so every label can send us digital assets, little, digital folder, And we'll get that out to all the social media managers out there that are utilizing that stuff, along with whatever your desired hashtags and handles are. So there's so much opportunity, and it doesn't cost anything to do. The other thing is like listening parties. Believe it or not, we have come full circle on listening parties, and there is no shortage of amount of people and fans that want to come together and hear an album before it drops. And so they'll come to a retail store. They love the community aspect of it. They get together with a bunch of fellow fans and they hear the music. And those really don't cost you other than to, maybe make some posters and some items to give away and, some treats for people that are coming, and maybe some digital marketing just to push the message out there. But there's not a whole huge amount of cost that goes into that kind of stuff. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff that doesn't cost anything anymore to do. But it takes a lot of coordination because let's face it, the indies, it's not like you talk to one person and you're one and done. There's a lot of people that need to be talked to and coordinate with. So the time is the money there.
Naturally, they are all independent. So instead of going to one sales rep for the entire chain,
it's the beauty.
Is there a marketing success story you can share with us about a project in particular that you're really proud of?
Yeah, actually, we had we've had quite a few, but last year in December we were putting out the physical version of the new ATEEZ record. It's a K-pop record, and if the previous record had come in and debuted at number 2 on the top 200 Billboard chart. And we were like, how do we get this to the number 1 slot on this next record? And so we're looking at the previous data from SoundScan and it was like, okay, you know what? We really needed the indie store strata to come in full force on this. And so we did. We put together listening parties. I think it was like 78 stores participated with these listening parties. We sent them a bunch of stickers and really cool stuff to give away, which in K-pop land is very important. They love the stuff, right? And so we spoke to their hearts, and sure enough, we had that debut at number 1 on the top 200 Billboard chart in the middle of December. And it really was because we pushed out this additional store strata. We had Barnes and Noble covered. We already had, Amazon and all of the biggies covered. And so we just needed that last little push, and the indies really came to the party on it. And let me tell you, I had indie stores that called and they were like, holy cow, I arrived and there was like, 75 little girls standing out in front of my store. They were like, what is happening? So it was pretty cool,
That's awesome. Mm-hmm. Obviously for an independent artist, there are certain hurdles to get over physically, from cost to timelines to just level of production. It's one thing to throw a track together and put it up on the DSPs. It's another thing to try to roll out a physical product. There's a lot more thought involved in that. What do you think are those biggest hurdles, and what are some ways artists can kind of get around those to help get the product out into the marketplace?
I think it's really important for artists to stop and think about just what they ultimately want to do. I mean, if you want to just throw a bunch of singles out on streaming and call it a day and keep doing that in perpetuity so that you can have some level of constant income stream and you can have some level of notoriety, then that's what you're going to do. But if you really want to have the longevity of a career and one that can pay your mortgage, like you got to fire on all cylinders. You got to cover the streaming, you got to cover the physical, you got to cover the touring and the merch and all those other things. And if you're not firing on all cylinders, it does not, like, streaming does not a career make. It just doesn't. It can start you off, but to have that sort of longevity where people have stuff in their homes that are attached to that artist, like, you've got to have items for that, right? You've got to have more stuff. So that'd be the first thing I would say. There are some challenges on the physical side to get over. It is costly in order to make a piece of vinyl. It takes time. The timing on it and the pipeline of that is something that you really need some assistance in that. Yes, can you do it on your own? Absolutely. Everybody can do pretty much any of this stuff on their own nowadays, but it's very difficult to get it out and get it widespread without a good distributor, a good label, somebody who's going to really guide and coach you about how to time these things out, what's the best route for marketing and things like that. So, but it's really important too to think about everything as an artist and an artist manager, to think about them holistically. So am I going to put out, 2 or 3 singles and then I'm going to put out the rest of the record? Okay, well, I don't want whatever I'm doing on my streaming side to neuter my abilities on my physical side. So maybe I want to create parity and do day and date with the distribution. With the release date. Maybe have a couple of precursor singles and then have everything go day and date. That'd be ideal. If you've got your physical that's going to come as an afterthought down the road, then you're going to really need to make sure that physical package is superior. It's got some extra tracks. It's got great packaging. It's got all of the things that would make somebody go, you know what? I'm going to go back out and take advantage of this piece of product now. So there's a lot of little details like that have to be thought of. And I don't think artists are always thinking about that. I think a lot of times it's like, okay, cool, I'm done in the studio. Just get it on and pop. And it's like, hold on a second, let's stop and let's regroup. Because think about it. It's your life's work. Like, it's an artist's life's work. So to have it in like the 11th hour, we drop the ball on physical and merch. Come on. Like, what are we doing? And so I think it's really important to stop, take a step back, look at it holistically and say, okay, here's the real plan for this record. And it's going to have some singles. It's going to have the physical. Now let's back out all of those dates and solve for that. I'm going to need distribution. I'm going to need radio or not, or, that kind of thing. I'm going to need videos. So I think backing that out and putting a real timeline with, dots on a timeline, marketing ticks on a timeline. These are all the marketing hits that are going to lead up to it, that are going to hit around the time, that are going to, carry it off into the sunset. And you also want to have a plan for your catalog. Have I restocked all of my catalog when I have a new release coming out? Am I set up? Do stores carry it? Have they restocked on this stuff? All that stuff it's all part of the bigger puzzle there when you're looking at the physical. So is it complicated? Yes. Can you is there more margin in physical? 100%. Can you chart without physical? Yes. But is it harder? 100%. So it tells the whole story. And the other thing is it really does help the artist have a full and complete, fan perspective, or a fan engagement, So why work on this stuff and spend all this time writing and producing and recording, and then you miss a whole segment of the audience there, and a whole segment of your income as well.
Well, the other side of it, is, even when you think, at the macro level, thinking about RIAA certification, it's, you gotta sell one record, and that goes so much further than streaming. 500,000 units sold for gold in the US is 70 million plus streams. Mm-hmm. It's a lot easier. It's hard to have 500,000 units out the door anyways today, but man, it sure does help those chances. I wanted to ask you, and you talked about radio, and you talked about, the various competing interests around a release strategy. And you go to talk to anybody at a label, especially a major, and you've got competing interests. You've got the streaming promotions people, kind of headbutting the radio promo people who want 4 months to work a single and things like that. And so you do have to, I think you have to unpack it, like you said, very carefully. One thing I've been talking to a lot of independent artists about, and I've advised them to do this, and I'm not sure if any have done it already or not, and I'm curious your thoughts on it, I'm a big believer in the scarcity rule. And I think that only being able to get certain things, certain places makes them more valuable, makes them more tangible, especially to super fans. And so if you have an artist who is touring actively and who has an active fan base, who has a merch table, but also wants to play the streaming game, wants to do the single every couple of weeks to try to keep building those numbers throughout the life cycle of a release, why not start out with the physical product finished? And why not single your way out digitally to the full record release, making the merch table and subsequently your physical retail customer rewarding them with items they'll otherwise not be able to have. Have you seen any of that? Have you seen windowing like that?
I have seen windowing like that. I think the key for every artist manager and artist that, or even label that's trying to make this decision is every single action you take, how can you wring the towel dry and not neuter your next action? So you really have to look at it and go, okay, so I've got a tour. It's going to start before the street date of the LP. How are we going to manage for that? How are we going to solve for that? So maybe I am going to put out something physical and I'm going to start with some, digital releases and then work towards, the pre-book of the full album. Maybe it's just as simple as making sure that you've got the pre-book of the full length record live and ready to rumble. It's already announced and you're pre-booking it at the time of your announced for the tour. Like all of those things have to jive. And then as far as variants go, my rule of thumb for variants is if you are thinking about making 500 variants, a purple color for whoever, as long as that is going to be additional units that you can sell, then heck yeah, go ahead and make it. Like, go berserk on it. But if you think it's going to neuter your sales somewhere else, then it doesn't really make sense to glut the playing field and then potentially upset a customer who's like, what? I didn't realize. Oh, now I have to buy 2 things, 3 things, that sort of thing for the super fans. So, but if you think you can sell more, then absolutely, by all means, do it. And you're also going to get some marketing legs off of those exclusive variants as well, right? So each retailer is going to go to market and do their own version of marketing on that because they've got something really cool to talk about. So it does make sense to do them for sure. It's not going to go away anytime soon. And then you also have to think about your D2C packaging as well. So and your D2C proposition, right? So you want to make sure that what you're going to be putting on your D2C isn't going to neuter all of the rest of the physical sales. So you want to make sure that that's day and date with whatever else is happening in the physical side of things. You're going to want to make sure that you're not screwing people on pricing over here and the pricing is better. It should just be an even playing field. And sure, you're going to have some big fan packs and, merch bundles and all sorts of other things that might happen on the D2C side, and that's fine. But you just really want to be mindful that you're also giving the general market and all of those retailers who are all marketing agents for you, by the way, like don't screw them. You don't want to screw your retail partners because they have a lot of customers to talk to about your product. So you don't want to make them have something that they can't even sell on their shelves. So you really want to just be really mindful of, again, not cutting off your nose to spite your face, right?
Yep. Don't robbing Peter to pay Paul. Never a good idea.
Yeah.
So let's look at the industry more as a whole. And as physical touches the industry, are there any emerging trends that you're seeing right now going on with regards to the physical side of distribution in the industry that you think artists and labels would be to pay attention to?
Yeah, don't discredit CD. CD is not gone. There are still a majority of cars on the road today have CD players. There are still a lot of first off, it's easier to carry when you're at a merch booth on tours. I mean, it's a lot easier to stand there and put something in your pocket or your bag as opposed to like a big piece of vinyl. So for touring, it's a lot easier and you have to keep it, I mean, God, Lord knows it's so hot some places in the country. So you got to be really mindful of climate and everything else, right? On the vinyl side. So don't discredit CD. We do see CD sales are up in certain store stratas. And so I think as the overall, it still looks to be that, vinyl has overtaken that. But ultimately, the CD is still selling tons and tons of units. So I would not discredit that. It's not gone. It's not dead. So if there, I think that's one thing. Another thing is Afrobeats. We're seeing, the world is at our doorstep here, and the world gets bigger and yet smaller every day. And so I think that's something that we're going to start to see even more of that, where you're seeing what we would have classically called international genres right here on the charts. And I think you'll see more and more and more of that. So those are a couple of trends there. I think also, there has been a bit of a trend, depending on the artist and kind of their philosophy with their fan base, to do just a general market release and not make fans go hither and yon to find all the variants. Some artists are doing that, and I think fans are pretty responsive to that. But again, that's case by case, that's artist by artist, and you really have to evaluate the fan base and what they want. Are they collectors? Do they like a whole lot of stuff? Are they like they can't wait to get their hands on anything the artist has, that sort of thing? So there's a lot of questions when you're distilling that down and mind mapping on what's the best strategy for the go-to-market on this.
Awesome. The look into your crystal ball. Predictions for the music industry for the next 5 years. The next couple of questions are fun ones because I kind of universally ask these because I'm always curious to hear the wondrous, brilliant people that are participatory with these interviews always come with really great ideas, and I learn something most of the time. But what do you see happening with regards to will we see new formats? Is there any kind of predictions for the industry?
Yeah, I think we're going to see some more greening efforts in the industry. I know that there are some labels out there that are trying to be green certified. I also know that, Alliance and Amped, we work with a manufacturing company stateside that is doing recycled vinyl. And so we are trying to recycle, and they will melt down some, the vinyl that's unused as opposed to it going into landfills. And I think you're going to start to see just more initiatives in that. I think you'll probably see some more manufacturing plants that can kind of take that on as well. So I think it's a global conversation that's happening there. It's pretty slow out of the gate here in the US, but, Dave Hansen's company there in Jersey, I think they're one that does that. And I think that's really awesome. There's some question about sound quality on that, yada, yada. But I think all those conversations are being had. And I think we'll see more of that on deck, especially depending on the election cycle this year and the greening initiatives there. And I think that we're going to continue to see the rise of physical. I think there's going to be more and more independent retailers coming on deck. I think you're seeing more stores opening up and a return to, so let's just say like Walmart is adding in some more CD SKUs into their stores. Best Buy is coming back into the music space in more of a way than they had been previously. And so you're going to see some reversal of that where people are like, you know what, we're in it. We're going to stay committed to it, or we're going to come back into it. Barnes & Noble's opening more stores this year. Again, Indies are opening more stores this year. And so, the physical retail, I think what happened is, the pandemic hit and everybody went home, and we realized that while social media was a godsend and we love it, and it is a godsend in many ways, it's not a replacement for physical connectivity and community and interaction. And so, now more than ever before, you'll see like at these listening parties at indie retail, just fans will just sit on the floor next to each other and just listen to music together. Like it's a thing, and people need that. People need to be in connection with each other, and music has always provided that. And I don't think that's going to end. And I think that's why we're seeing, sales up at indies. Indies are now like 40% of the physical business. That's massive.
Yeah.
And that's growing, and it will continue to grow. So I just think that we all just need to keep supporting it and filling that pipeline with more product and more artists, making sure that when they're putting stuff out, they're doing physical as well, because we need those guys to stay around,
Wonderful. No, that's all great. And I do think that the shared experiences piece of it is, especially as you look at like record concert sales that have happened post-COVID, et cetera. I think people.
Yeah, I just read a report this morning that a bunch of there's been so many canceled concerts this year, and festivals canceled this year because they just aren't making enough money. And I think, when you've got you've got a limited amount of income and expendable income, I guess I should say, and perhaps a $200 or $250 festival ticket is out of reach, but the CD or the LP is still in reach, you're going to go for it. And you're going to create community some other way to sit and listen together. So
now that makes complete and total sense.
Yeah.
All right. We're kind of getting down to the end of our time here. This brings me to one of my favorite questions, which always is a bit of a gotcha for my guests here. But I want to know, who is your favorite current artist you are listening to? Preferably someone you're not directly working to market.
But I'm not directly working.
Which is hard for you guys because
That's impossible. What are you talking about? That is literally an impossibility for me right now.
Most people I'd hold their feet to the fire over the not currently working with, but I'll yes on this.
I'm slightly obsessed with Kendrick Lamar. So
Kendrick. All right.
That's definitely not one of mine. I wish it was, but he's not. But he is just brilliant and amazing. And I think what he does is amazing. I think he is a truth teller. He is a keeper of the culture. And I think that he is so smart. So I love that.
So Kendrick
Can
Lamar.
I talk about some of the ones I also love that happen to be in my camp? Come on now.
Okay. I'll give you one in your camp. I think I know which one it's gonna be though. You say it. Let me see if I guessed it right.
Shabuzi.
Yes, I knew it.
Come on. Of course. Look, this is amazing. We're at 6 weeks on the top 100 charts right now. Number one. And he also has broken historical records by being in the top 10 at like 4 different formats at radio at the same time. Mm-hmm. It's a sea change. And he's at the forefront of that. And I really, really love it. I love what he does. I love what he sounds like. He's so nice. And it's just, it's refreshing. And so I also love, if you haven't gone out and looked at his videos, they're so brilliant. He kind of has like a sort of spaghetti Western sort of video concepts out there. There's other ones as well, but it's just really interesting. All the videos with the songs and it's just a great record. So I definitely think if you haven't heard of Shabuzi, you must. He did have 2 tracks on the most recent Beyonce record, which was awesome and amazing. His star was already rising, and then of course the meteoric rise just after that. So
that was good timing there.
Yeah, definitely
on that end.
Great timing there.
So and hat tip to our friends over at Empire on that.
Absolutely,
that really
Empire's smoking.
That has really been an exciting development for them. And I remember hearing my friend Eric Hurt talk about his guy Shabuzi years ago, and me going, who? Yeah. And just to see it all come to reality now, and to see them all dance in the sunlight's really nice. Because again, independence succeeding is a wonderful, wonderful thing. And we, would I love to be involved? Yeah, of course I'd love to be involved, business wise, but I feel like the rising tide lifts all boats. And I feel like, if an independent can go shatter records like Shabuzi has, that means more can. And that's very exciting to me.
Yeah. I would say one other thing is in terms of the predictions, with all of the venture capital companies and all those guys on Wall Street that are buying up catalogs everywhere. And right now, their valuations are what they are. But at some point, we all know that have been in the industry a long time, a catalog is only going to sell as well as you work it. And there's going to be a real need for people that know how to work catalogs and get that product back out into the pipeline, both streaming and physically and otherwise, back into the mainstream. And so it always breaks my heart to know just how much catalog is sitting in vaults somewhere that is not being touched right now. I feel like it's a crime against humanity personally. So that always disturbs me anyway. But all of these companies that like really have they're just bean counters that have no vested interest in the music per se. I think we need to keep our eyes on those like the Reservoirs of the world and places like that are buying those catalogs, that are music people and do know what they're doing. And so I think that's going to be a real opportunity in the future here for the industry.
Yeah. I think the pendulum is definitely going to swing back towards music on that. I mean, private equity can come in and fund it, but as you say, without creative input, you can't speed up that recoupment clock. And if you can't speed up the recoupment clock, that 18x that you just paid really, really is a tough sell down the road. So, my gosh, Jocelynn, it's been a pleasure to have you here. Ladies and gentlemen, of course, we're great friends and great colleagues, but we also work together. And in that Amped is the distribution arm of Symphonic. And so our great physical distribution offering that we have runs through Amped. Our priorities that we're excited about go through Jocelynn. And so if you were not aware, we are in the physical distribution space. Of course, Amped you can find them, everywhere social media exists. And they've just been wonderful partners. And Jocelynn's been a great partner and great friend for many, many years. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. And thank you for what you guys do. Your whole team are so spectacular on all fronts. And so shout out to Kevin, because, he's holding it down on the physical side. But I really appreciate everything that Symphonic does specifically. And I appreciate what you're doing here in the industry, because I think this is important to talk about this stuff and just make sure there's so many new artists coming up, but there's so many new artist managers coming up that never had to deal with the physical space. And so they're like, what? Gobsmacked. So having stuff like this where they can hear about it and think about it and start to plan around it makes us all better.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. And thank you for joining us. Ladies and gentlemen, you have been listening to Jocelynn Pryor wax poetic on all things physical here on the Music Industry 360 podcast. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for being here. I am Randall Foster, your fearless host, and we will see you next time.